John?
Hi, John.
Hello?
It's Chelsea. I had talked to Ray Lloyd yesterday about possibly doing an interview today.
Oh, hi, Chelsea. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, good, thank you. Yeah, no worries. I actually just got a reminder on my iPhone to call you if I didn't hear from you. So, but you called right on time. No worries. So how can I help you?
Yes, it's we're working on a supply chain project, and so we're really just looking to interview almost like on your supply chain experience, and we have some questions prepared just in case we want to get more in detail. But I have two other group members with me as well.
Okay.
So, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Trent. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And I'm Tyler. Nice to meet you as well.
Okay, terrific. Well, I'm all ears and ready to answer any questions you folks may have.
All right. So, Ray, what was your what was your position title?
I was owner of a lighting manufacturing company based out of Weatherford, Texas. However, we manufactured in Asia, in China, in the Dongguan province of China, in a town called Jiangmen, spelled Jiangmen, and had an office based out of Hong Kong, and did that for about 15 years.
Oh goodness! So you have a lot of supply chain experience then.
Yes, sir.
So
Well, I would say manufacturing experience, but obviously supply chain is a very important factor within manufacturing, especially manufacturing overseas.
So did you oversee the entire supply chain as owner of the company?
Certainly didn't oversee it. I had, if you will, field generals that, handled great portions of that. But as owner, I certainly understood some of the costs and expenses and associated with supply chain, from inspectors to freight forwarders to container ports to container port strikes and how that affects business and so forth to the retail shelf in the United States.
So how did your organization manage demand?
Manage demand. Well, managing demand I was in a seasonal lighting business, okay? So we're talking things like Christmas lights, right? So the lead time is approximately 18 months. So as an example, if we were looking at next Christmas, the entire process essentially begins March of 2016 to begin thinking about products that will arrive on the shelf in Christmas 2017. That entire process begins with product design and development. That is approximately a 4 to 5 month process based on what is ironically, in this seasonal example that I'm giving you, is ironically based on many of the fashion runways of Paris and New York and so forth. Most all product design originates from clothing.
Really? It's interesting.
Indeed. When it comes to retail durable goods, okay, for the U.S. market, so you get influence from that type of design, whether it be modern, casual. There are obviously architectural considerations when you talk about seasonal lighting. But long story short, you go through a 4 or 5 month product development cycle, and then the entire whole of the U.S. open to buy, as you call it, and buyers will migrate to Hong Kong. When they migrate to Hong Kong, or one of two places, Hong Kong or Shanghai, but you could even say the Pacific Rim. And the reason that you say Pacific Rim is because of the 15 years I was there doing this type of manufacturing, 3 of those 15 years, I moved my entire manufacturing to other countries because of duty rate considerations importing to the U.S. So, in such a thin margin business, 1-2% duty rate hikes can have a significant impact on your net profitability. So, but primarily everybody migrates to Hong Kong. You go through a series of 2 months worth of literally appointments showing your product line to major retailer buyers of the United States. Everybody leaves essentially at the end of October, and you make any product development adjustments. Once those adjustments are complete, everybody comes back literally January 1 or 2. They review what you've changed for their programs. They give you their decisioning with regards to are they going to buy, they're going to not buy from you. And then they will soon thereafterwards, through their Hong Kong or Shanghai-based operations, meaning the retailers, those individuals that live in country would give you purchase orders, and then you literally begin the process of manufacturing, securing the raw materials and so forth, and that all occurs after Chinese New Year, which is usually sometime in February.
Goodness, that's a very in-depth. That's a very in-depth chain. So, how did how did improvements in technology affect your supply chain? Or
Sure. Probably the single largest improvement in technology in my particular supply chain was the transition from incandescent lighting to LED lighting. So with the advent of light-emitting diodes and the ability for those to consume less energy and to be able to string those types of products together more robustly. As an example, if you buy an incandescent light string, your maximum, usually the number of light strings you can put together are 5, whereas an LED light string you may be able to put together 100. Certainly there is a cost difference, especially in the beginning of the light-emitting diode, but that has since normalized, and there is a very nominal difference these days between LED and incandescent.
So, other than the duty changes in your supply chain, was there any other big factors or challenges that you faced with your supply chain?
Certainly, fuel cost is a certain big consideration when if you're manufacturing in Asia, most retailers will purchase from you what's called FOB, freight on board. Freight on board can mean freight on board at the factory, freight on board at the discharge port, freight on board at the transfer port, or freight on board delivered to the port in the United States. So these are all just factors that you have to take into consideration when giving your pricing to any retailer. And you certainly have to be well aware of hedging on fuel costs, because that is a direct relation to what that container is going to cost you to transport wherever the FOB point is, whether that be at the originating factory warehouse door or all the way to the warehouse door of the retailer.
So, did your company favor one of those FOB?
FOB factory door was my favorite because I never had to take into consideration of speculating what freight cost would be.
Okay. So did your
certainly the I'm sorry to interrupt. Certainly the retailers had much more impact on their negotiations with freight forwarding companies that allowed them to negotiate predetermined costs. I have a 40-foot high cube container. what's my cost? Whether that was $2,000, for me it may have been $2,500. Just because I'm certainly not going to export as many containers as that one retailer will import from so many manufacturers.
Okay. So, if you don't mind, can you give me a timeline of when you operated this company?
Began in 1996 and ended in 2011.
Okay. So, how did your organization address like the emphasis on sustainability?
Sustainability, it's interesting you mention it because in the lighting category, the number one ability for sustainability, or the number one factor in sustainability, was one, moving from incandescent to LED, and there's still a very large demand of incandescent lighting. The U.S. market was probably the last market to really buy into the LED lighting just because of the way the light was previewed by the naked eye. Early LED technology, certainly all of it since the beginning has allowed for power savings, so electrical use, but the manufacturing process certainly was much more difficult. So don't know really that it made much of an impact, if you will. Where most of it came was in packaging. What used to be very thick, corrugated cardboard, if you will, very high, dense packaging, we had to move to much more clever packaging ideas to reduce cube size, reduce overall waste, reduce paper consumption. And by the way, you did mention that is another one thing. Paper cost was also a very large factor in determining overall cost of whatever said item. Just due to packaging. And that was actually really spearheaded more by retailers than it was the manufacturing community.
So I just have a question on kind of like how your team worked with one another to make sure that there was almost like no mistakes within the supply chain. Like almost if you had like a certain plan developed for the supply chain organization.
Okay, so you're talking about the interaction of our team members,
Yeah.
like of our management team? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, manufacturing in Asia is much, much different than what you might consider, or what you might be learning in the classroom, so to speak. I would say that I had a very, very wide awakening as to the processes in Asia versus the processes in the United States. So I was fortunate enough to work for a local company as a very young person, Williamson-Dickey Manufacturing, just here in downtown Fort Worth. And I did work under the ownership there on the Walmart account. And there was a very standardized, hierarchical process, right? I come with an idea, I present it to my manager's going to present it to the board of maybe middle or senior managers, then they would take that to decision makers, right? And maybe those things come through, maybe they don't. In Asia, what I discovered was the cultural difference was certainly one to consider, but the real cultural difference came in that if it was one of my in-country employees, they were very, very hesitant to make a decision because they were afraid to make mistakes. Because in the traditional Eastern company hierarchy, boss makes the decision. We have to remember it's a communist country.
Right.
The boss makes the decision, and no one questions it, regardless of the outcome. And so that was a very long process, more than 3 years, for me to have the individual to employ understand that I did not have to make every decision, and that they could use their expertise and their knowledge to make those decisions. And if mistakes occurred, it's certainly okay. Everything is fixable. But as far as the checks and balances, it was more of some systems upgrades that allowed closer tracking of our supply chain from the raw material standpoint. The lighting is made of, some very basic components, but, from the plastics to the copper to the husks and the bulbs themselves. So that was primarily more so tracked, systemically versus non-systemically. Because upon arrival, it was all done on a laptop and an Excel spreadsheet, which we quickly outgrew, fortunately.
Okay. What do you believe was the key factor to your supply chain success?
What was the key factor? There's a couple of factors. In terms of growth of my company, it was when the dollar became much, much stronger against the yen. When the dollar is stronger, I can buy more yen, I can hire more people, I can expand and grow. Interest rates being so utterly low after 2008 to spur activity. From fire, there sometimes becomes new life. And that holds true in a forest and in an economy. And when the economy burned to the ground in 2008, it did open the door to go and borrow at very low rates that allowed for money to be available to go and expand capacity, expand product development, and it certainly allowed for more eyes to be able to do that checks and balances that you asked me about earlier, that, kept us profitable.
Okay. I think that's good.
I don't know if that's the kind of answer you were looking for, but certainly borrowing capacity improved in 2008.
No, it's definitely helpful and very, the information is very helpful to use. And I think that we pretty much have what we need from you, and we're very thankful. Thank you so much for doing this last minute. I know it was like yesterday, but it was very helpful.
Problem.
And definitely it will be put into a YouTube video, but it's going to be primarily for our professor only, so you don't have to worry about having your interview posted to the public.
Okay, terrific. Just only because in the cell of my company, I do have confidentiality agreements. So,
Oh, yes, for sure.
if you would be so kind as to just maybe not even put last name and just put an initial, and then if your professor needs some type of validation, I'd be happy to do that.
Oh, thank you so much, for sure. We will make sure that that's well put. But thank you again, and if there's anything else that we may need, is it okay if we email you?
Oh, absolutely. You guys have my email?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Well, and if you have any other questions and you feel